Cadmus. Every story needs a hero, and this one is no exception. You know his name. No doubt you've seen it tagged around Devonport, or read it in the gossip section of the Herald. Maybe you've heard it sung by foxes at twilight, or flung around the office like a donation box or a bad smile. If you listen very carefully, even the sea will whisper it when it comes in each night to kiss the rocks. Cadmus, it seems to say. Cadmus, Cadmus, Cadmus. You couldn't say a bad word against Cadmus. Not at first, anyway. Cadmus came down from London town. He was cool and quick and calm, both charming and disarming. Cadmus was no cad, a real proper sort of lad with fine cropped hair, immaculate polo shirt, soft eyes that listened, white teeth that glistened, and a huge, dazzling sword. He pretty much oozed refinement, from the way he leant an elbow on the bar to the way he went, "What you having, sweetheart?" from afar. You know the sort. Cadmus knew he was made of the same stuff as kings, flesh and blood and other bits like that, but also that indiscernible quality, you know, that je ne sais quoi. It was as though something was inside him, royalness written on his skin, and even when he farted it smelled like success. Now, every king needs a kingdom, and Cadmus, of course, was no exception. Since Daddy was alive and well and looking after things at home, our caddy decided to set off to try and make it on his own. So he journeyed down, past city spires, through bogs and mires, round fields and forests, tors and turrets towards the coast, where grey turned green turned wide wet blue. He reached what he believed to be the very edge of civilization, the southwest. Of course, this was back in a time when Londoners all reckoned culture began and ended within a 10-mile radius of Whitehall. Perched high, on that place where two rivers meet the sea, Cadmus thought, yeah, this is a bit of me. I'm completely on my own. I've got free rein to reign, carte blanche you might say, and a sudden urgent notion to build myself a city by the ocean. And so he began. Now, what's the first thing you need when you're building a city? That's right, buildings. And what are buildings made out of? Stone. So he went down to the beach with his bucket and spade and began picking up pebbles. And he was so distracted that at first he didn't notice the dragon. And the dragon, who was also walking along the beach, also picking up pebbles, was so distracted that it didn't notice Cadmus. Yep, every good beach has a dragon, and this is no exception. Dragons back then, you see, they weren't commonplace, but there were a few knocking about. Legend has it that they were the guardians of sacred grounds, hatched from these huge eggs that would appear mysteriously only in times of trouble. Dispatched, perhaps, by the seas, or the trees, or the winds to watch over this fumbling, bumbling world. This particular dragon was a water dragon, snaky and slippery with a long green body as wide as a bed, a thick tail bristling with scales and 3 very venomous heads. A colossal and impressive beast. This was the 3-headed Hydra, guardian of the seas, fellow pebble collector, beach porter, fierce protector of this particular stretch of water. It spent its days watching the bays like a Lysoidian Hasselhoff. In the sun, its skin shone with millions of small gold flakes. When Cadmus saw this creature, he did a double take. And when the 3-headed beast saw Cadmus, this fleshy thing in skinny jeans, it did a triple double take. Excuse me, the middle head said. Could I just ask, interjected the left. What the hell are you doing here? Finished the right, who was the rudest of the 3. I'm Cadmus, said Cadmus, expecting at least recognition, maybe gentle applause, but nothing. He said it again. I'm Cadmus. I've come to build a city, yeah? So I can be king of that city? Now, help me find some nice rocks, would ya? But, the 3-head stuttered. But this is our home. We live here. So bog off. Listen, Cadmus carried on. I don't want any trouble, yeah? But even as he said this, his fist tightened just a little round his sword. I've come to spruce the place up a bit, yeah? All you've got now is a big pile of rocks on an empty beach. By the time I'm done, you'll have a Primark, a casino, a shrine to Athena, a booming student population. You'll have jobs, coffee shops, even a Bill's. I'm doing you a favour, so chill. But the water dragon didn't chill. The middle head tried to reason with our hero, the left began to cry, the right kept spitting blue fire and calling Cadmus a stuck-up member of the London liberal elite, and all that pleading and squealing and fire-breathing, that snipping, guilt-tripping, crying, whining, swearing, unswerving, ungrateful, hateful, groaning, moaning, clattering, chattering began to give Cadmus a right headache. So what do you think he did? He swung his sword in one defiant swing, and off they came, all three heads, three separate geysers of red. Laying on the ground like discarded socks, the shining body of the beast came crashing, its blood pebble dashing rocks. Redness poured out into the sand, into the soil, into the sea, and everywhere it ran the deep red shone, small flecks of gold reflecting the sun. Something stirred inside Cadmus. It was as though something had happened here which couldn't be undone. Nah, he thought, time to crack on. But no sooner had he thought this when another figure appeared on the beach. A woman, in a gold blazer, lanyard emblazoned with the symbol of an owl, clutching a clipboard in one hand and in the other a pair of golden pliers. "Okie dokie," she said. "You've killed the dragon, well done. I have to say, this is a prime piece of real estate we're standing on, and that dragon has been nothing but an eyesore. Really puts the investors off, so good job there. A couple of things to go over. First off, that was my brother Aaron's dragon, and he is extremely petty, unforgiving, and sort of, what's the word, cursy? So I'd be careful if I were you. Second thing is, I just need you to pull the dragon's teeth out, pop them in the ground, and, well, actually that's pretty much it. Any questions?" "You want me to pull the dragon's teeth out and plant them in the ground?" "Yep." "And then what, do I get to be king?" Sure." "Wicked. Anything else? I need to be back in the office soon." Well, what's your name?" "Tina," said Tina. "Well, I'm Cadmus," said Cadmus. "King Cadmus, I suppose. Yeah, it's got a bit of a nice ring to it. What do you reckon, But Tina had already climbed into her chariot and left. So he took the pair of pliers and yanked and bashed and heaved, prizing out incisors, conquering chompers, banging out fangs until finally he held a fistful of pearly white teeth, dragon teeth, and they were heavy in his hand and strangely powerful, still speckled with the dragon's ruby red blood. Then, as strange as it seemed, Cadmus began planting the teeth, one by one, on the raggedy beach. The first tooth sprang straight out of the sand, and to our hero's amazement it became a whole harbour, full of docks and cobbles and wooden walkways, fishing boats laden with cages, nets, ropes and sailing vessels. Cadmus was understandably taken aback. He'd been expecting, I don't know, dragon fruit, maybe, tomatoes, something, not a whole working maritime harbour. He took a few steps inland and planted another. This time, a church rose out of the ground, its steeple shooting suddenly up between his legs, only narrowly missing his dazzling sword. No sooner was it up than the bells began to toll. People started flocking from the harbour there to sing. During the first hymn, Cadmus planted 3 more teeth. From out of the earth came a school, a lighthouse, a huge naval base. 8 more teeth delivered a post office, birthed a hospital, fashioned a clothes shop, erected a strip club, devised a theatre, hatched a fried chicken place, sprang up a waterworks, threw up an all-you-can-eat buffet, until a whole city lay before him, one which had grown right out of the ground, and Cadmus was speechless. Every building, every park, every part of his kingdom shone gold speckles in the sun. Now, since he'd used a pair of pliers to yank the teeth from the dragon's mouths, since he'd plied them from a mouth, he decided to name the city, that's right, Torquay. No, not really, it was Plymouth. And Cadmus became the king of Plymouth. This was back in a time when Plymouth still had kings. He now had everything he wanted. A castle, a kingdom, and all the power he'd always known he was born for. He was a great king, strong-willed, fair and just, killing only when he needed to, sailing out across the seas to find new land, to plant fresh teeth. Near city spires, in bogs and mires, round fields and forests, tors and turrets, dragon blood pooled ruby red everywhere he went, and everything afterwards always seemed to glitter. One day, when he was walking the streets of his kingdom, a man approached Cadmus. He had black straggly hair, these wide, wild eyes, and was dressed in a faded uniform. "What has it cost you?" he said, rather strangely. "Sorry, what?" "I'm Aaron. You killed my dragon. You killed my dragon all because he was in your way." "Oh, right, sorry." The man screamed and shouted and flapped his arms around in a really vulgar, peasant-y sort of way, until the king's men finally dashed in and began to drag him off. But Cadmus was a reasonable king. He held them off for a moment. "Listen," he said, in his most measured voice. "I killed your dragon, mate. But look what we gained. Look how prosperous this city is. Look how well we're all doing. We've got a Prezzo's, a Zizzi's, and a Bella Italia." The stranger's nostrils flared, as though he didn't care at all about Bella Italia. In his fist, he held some sort of dust. He lifted it and blew into Cadmus's face. It was green and hovered there in the air, until Cadmus sneezed and the cloud dispersed. "There," he said softly. "There." The guard seized the stranger, dragged him off to... Cadmus didn't really know where, he was just glad to be done with the whole thing. He looked up at the town hall, which before now had always shone in that speckled, flecks of gold way he had so often admired. But today something was different. It was wet. The walls were slick and sticky, not with rain, but with what appeared for one bonkers moment to be blood. Cadmus swung around. From where he stood, he saw the church, the tower blocks, the shops, even CEX, all covered not in flecks of gold, but wet, red blood. "Oh, gods," thought Cadmus, "this is a bloody nightmare." He looked around, expecting to see cyclists stopping, shopping bags dropping, eyes popping, but there was none of that. Nobody gawping or gasping or asking, "What's going on?" Only Cadmus seemed to see this sudden, uninvited blood, and only he really understood why. For the first time in his life, he was afraid. His hair grew thin, his nerves frayed, his swagger dropped into a slouch, his sword went completely blunt. His skin was almost green from worry. In one disastrous press conference he admitted, yes, he had slain a dragon, and afterwards there was an uproar. But come on, it was a long time ago. It was all part of a quest, and now what? Everybody's suddenly a bunch of dragon romantics. How could they be so forgetful, so ungrateful, so pedantic? And what's a bit of blood, really? Especially invisible blood. Cadmus stopped making speeches altogether. He avoided the city centre. He went on long, rambling walks along the coastal path, scratching at his chin. Stress had made him break out in a sort of scaly rash. He reached that point where the two rivers meet the sea, stood and watched the water slosh together like three heads in conversation. His cheeks ran wet with tears of regret. He sighed, and his breath was blue fire. Every story has an ending. This is ours. All we know is this. One day Cadmus was gone. The people of Plymouth didn't really know how to respond. They put up a statue and then took it down. They put up a statue of a dragon instead, and then they put the statue of Cadmus back up next to the dragon. Sometimes it felt like healing. Sometimes it didn't. Sometimes it felt like old wounds opening over and over. Legend says that dragons, though they're not commonplace, can still be found, even today. that they are the guardians of sacred grounds, dispatched maybe by the seas or the trees or the winds to watch over this fumbling, stumbling world. Legend also says that somewhere on a beach near here, a huge green dragon roams the ragged rocks, picking up pebbles and then chucking them back down. That this dragon has 3 heads, a wide body as big as a bed, skinny jeans stretched over his legs, and that the sea will sometimes whisper his name.